worldly wisdom and godly wisdom. How do they correlate and how do they compare? And how can you use both of them in your life? Well, let's talk about worldly wisdom for a little bit. Worldly wisdom is what you know about the world. It's what you go to get a degree for. It's math, science, social studies, history, all these things that you strive for in school. It's knowing what's right and what's wrong. It's knowing worldly things. It's knowing you shouldn't walk on thin ice. It's knowing you shouldn't jump off a bridge. This is all worldly wisdom. And worldly wisdom is very much essential to how we live our life. Because how do we go get a job if we don't know anything? How do we go and talk to people when we don't know what they like, what they're interested in? What we don't, if we don't know about them? How do we go out and do these things? Without worldly wisdom, we cannot do most of the things we do. Worldly wisdom is necessary. We have to have it in our life. Godly wisdom is also very much necessary because godly wisdom holds promise for this life and the life to come. Godly wisdom is about God. It's about Jesus. It's about his commandments of how we should live our life. Godly wisdom provides us with morals, provides us with values on how we should live our life, how we should conduct ourselves, how we should become a better person. This is what godly wisdom offers us. Okay, Jesus says, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. His commandments are in the Bible. His commandments are godly wisdom. So if we love Jesus, we must keep his commandments. We must do his commandments on earth. This is godly wisdom. It correlates with godly wisdom and worldly wisdom, very much alike. So, how do we relate the two? We know what worldly wisdom is, and we know that what godly wisdom is. Because if you take a look at the Bible, it is an instruction manual on how you should live your life. It is a guidebook on what you should do. Because if you take a step back and realize what the Bible is an instruction manual, is the Word of God on how we should live our life. Because at the end of John, it says something very, very interesting. It says, the books of the world could not contain the amount of things Jesus has done. Meaning that God has put everything we need into the Bible. If we need anything else, it would have been in there. If we didn't need anything else, he would have taken stuff out. Right? The Bible is all we need. It's all the spiritual knowledge we need. Of course, prayer, fasting, all this stuff is how we acquire specific spiritual knowledge. That is true. But the Bible is the instruction manual of how we should live our life. It is a guidebook. It provides the answers to the questions we have. So, how do we use godly and worldly wisdom to our advantage? Well, first of all, we have to have worldly wisdom. We take that worldly wisdom and we pair it with the Bible. And a great example of this is psychology. Psychology is the study of how people think. It is how people think about what they want, what they're willing to do for what they want, right? The things that go on inside of a person's head, their thoughts, their reasonings, and everything else. That is what psychology is. Understanding how people think. And if you can understand how people think and also understand the Bible, you can really put those two together to preach the Word of God. Because my goal in life is I want to pursue psychology. That's what I want to do. That's what I want to do in college. But I also want to be a preacher. And having that knowledge of knowing how people think, knowing why people do things, and pairing it with the Word of God, and pairing it with preaching, and pairing it with displaying the Word of God, and preaching the Word of God, pairing those two things together is an unmatched duo. Worldly wisdom plus godly wisdom can be amazing. It can be great. You can use it for many things. But worldly wisdom and godly wisdom can also collide. You see professors, you see these people that are so smart rebuke God, say he's not real. Because what they're doing is relying so heavily on worldly wisdom that they forget spiritual wisdom. They're so focused on the world, so focused on science, so focused on things they can prove that they don't focus on the spiritual wisdom. Because these people, they have to have all the answers. That is why they don't believe in the Bible, because they can't prove it exists. They can't prove that God actually exists. Science cannot prove that God exists. We have to have faith he does. We have to have faith God exists. Of course, there's a constants, right? You have gravity. You have, I'm not very sciencey. But you have all these constants, all these variables that are so perfectly in time, so perfectly fit together. That's like one in like trillions of trillions of trillions that it would happen to be that perfect. And that is proof that God exists. Because if one of those constants were out of order, one of those laws were out of order, we would not have life on earth. Science cannot explain that. Oh yeah, this is a cosmic fluke. Yeah, it just randomly happened. No, it's God. God did this. God provided us with this. That is why worldly wisdom can contrast with godly wisdom. When you rely so heavily on worldly wisdom that you forget God. This is why all these professors, all these super smart people, people that other people look up to, renounce the existence of God, say he's not true. This is why we need smart people to come into this space. People to study worldly wisdom, people to go to college, get degrees, become people that other people look up to and preach the word of God. This is why I'm pursuing psychology. This is why I want to become a professor in psychology, so that I can preach the word of God. I can do that already. I'm doing it now. But I can use that wisdom I got from worldly things, for pursuing this degree, for doing these things, and pair them with spiritual wisdom. Put those together and preach the word of God. Excuse me. This is why it's so important to have a balance of the two. It's so important to use the two. Because paired together, worldly wisdom and godly wisdom is an unmatched duo. I have here a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. It talks about socializing with people. It talks about how to get people like you. How to get people like you. How to help them. Right? Knowing these, how to talk to people, how to socialize with people, how to make friends and influence people, how to influence people, and pair it with the Bible, how to preach to people more effectively, how to talk to people about the gospel more effectively, how to get people to be friends with you, how to network with people. This is what it causes you to do. Because once you learn how to implement godly wisdom and worldly wisdom together, then you can start to realize these things that other people don't. Then you can start to use these things that other people don't. So go out, learn as much as you can learn, read as much as you can read, and combine the two. Godly and worldly wisdom. Combine those two and go out and preach the gospel. Trust me, it will not let you down. Trust me, God will use you.